So, we have this client we're supposed to be meeting next week. Knockoff?
That's the one with the employment dispute, right? The one about the dismissal.
Yeah. Apparently, Simon International School went and replaced him with a permanent substitute.
That sounds like a tough time, huh? Heard he's considering ADR though.
Yeah, we'll have to look into whether ADRs are suitable for him.
Before anything, we'd have to look into his employment contract, see if he's got any kind of clause that stipulates ADR.
Right. Well, if he doesn't, then we'd have to look into which ones are suitable.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work.
It's okay. That's for us to worry about later. Cheers.
Hello, thank you for meeting me today and taking on my case.
Oh no problem. In fact, thank you for having faith in us and allowing us to handle your case.
Look forward to working with you.
So, I believe you went over your current situation with our intern over the phone the other day. But just in case you missed something, could you briefly go over the issue with us again?
Sure. I have been teaching biology professionally for 27 years at Sunway International School. For the past 26 years, I had never missed a class. However, due to a spinal injury, I missed the last 2 months of classes due to 1 month of hospitalization, and I also had to attend physiotherapy once a week. Although I have little more than a year to go before I have to retire, Sunway had hired a permanent substitute teacher to teach biology. I think I may have a case against them for constructive dismissal and, or at the very least, discrimination. But the thing is, if I were to bring a suit to court, it would take too long.
That does sound like quite a predicament. Well, we understand that you've looked into ADR quite a bit and you're keen on attempting it. So we've taken a look through your employment contract with Simway, and it doesn't appear to stipulate any compulsory ADR process for potential disputes.
This means you may have the option of deciding which ADR process you would like to pursue, should you wish to do so. Is that still the case?
Yes, I still believe that alternative dispute resolutions is the most suitable for my situation.
Well, Narcos, before we go into whether ADR is suitable for you, why don't you tell us what you know about it, based on your own research?
Okay, sure. So, based on my research, if I were to go for alternative dispute resolution, the main advantage would be a speedier resolution for my case, as compared to litigation, which I believe takes a longer time. I base my belief on the case of lead contractor Sendirian Berhad against Castle Inn Sendirian Berhad, which proves that litigation can stretch on for nearly 8 years, and this is not just due to wait times for the cases to be heard in court, but also the ability to appeal and the complexity of the case may further increase the delay for a resolution. And by then, I would have already been in retirement for a good few years. Furthermore, the longer a case drags out in court, the final costs would skyrocket, and the award by the courts may not even be worth my time and effort, considering the fact that, in the first place, as I've discovered, ADR costs are between 1/8 and 1/3 of litigation costs. I have also heard that the things said and done in ADR are private as compared to litigation, whereby the contents of a case are made public, including the statements of all parties involved, as well as the award given by the courts. As you know, I work as a teacher, and thus I would prefer to keep this dispute private from my students and colleagues, in order to avoid the unnecessary scrutiny, which I fear could hinder my ability to teach effectively. Additionally, during the course of my research, I stumbled upon the case of Malaysian newsprint industries Sendirian Berhad against Bechtel International Inc. and another, which basically states that ADR agreements have an implied term of confidentiality, even when it is not expressly stated in the agreement itself. Hence, it seems safe for me to assume that by choosing to go for ADR instead of litigation, the subject matters of my case will be kept entirely confidential. Besides that, I have heard that parties opting for ADR get to play a driving role in the entire process, that they get to voice their opinions and in the process of this, gain emotional closure too. I have also heard that there's a lot of flexibility afforded to parties in choosing their dispute resolution representative, particularly in regards to choosing ones with certain expertise. Furthermore, I have learned that the courts have placed a duty on the representative to perform their duties fairly, with objectiveness and patience, much like a judge in a normal litigation process. Hence, I am confident that by choosing ADR, my needs will be better met as compared to litigation.
Oh, you seem to have done extensive research on ADR. So my partner and I have considered your case and decided that mediation might be the most suitable. So mediation is where a third party, a mediator, helps both sides come to a mutually acceptable agreement. As mediation is a consensual process, the parties in mediation must voluntarily agree both to submit the matter to mediation and also accept the settlement, which must then be made in writing and be binding. This means that both you and representatives from Steinway International School would have to agree to take your issue to mediation. The mediator would then help you facilitate the discussion regarding a settlement, and if all goes well, the two of you would sign a written agreement on what settlement you ended up reaching. The reason why we think mediation is the most suitable choice actually relate closely to the points you mentioned above: costs, time, and formality. With regard to costs, generally, it's up to the parties to negotiate with the mediator. However, to give you a general idea of how much it'll cost, we can look at the AIAC, prescribe a daily rate of 5,000 ringgit or an hourly rate of 650 ringgit. Now, this might seem like a lot of money at first glance, but when you factor in the fact that most disputes can typically be settled within a day or two, the costs overall are likely to add up to less than other forms of PR, let alone litigation. This brings us to our next point, that is speed. As I said before, mediation would typically yield a resolution within a day or two, but there's also the advantage of procedural flexibility, which allows for mediation to be conducted online or even somewhat asynchronously if need be. This means that the issue of clashing schedules between you and the representative from Steinway would largely be resolved. This is especially important in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic, as we're all not so keen on being in close proximity, as you know. The procedural flexibility also allows us to make the process less formal and stringent, in turn making the process less daunting for both you and Steinway. Typically, this informality tends to make the process less adversarial, thereby encouraging more progressive discussion as to a suitable settlement. Finally, there's the issue of flexibility of settlement. As the mediator does not make an order or issue any award, but merely facilitates the parties to come to a mutually satisfactory agreement, the parties are free to agree whatever terms they like. In effect, this means that you and Steinway could, say, agree to allow you to return to work, or instead negotiate an agreement to relieve you of your duties in return for some kind of monetary compensation. This affords a nice amount of flexibility in terms of the kind of remedy you'd like to seek in this whole ordeal. It is for these reasons that we think mediation is the most suitable option for you.
With that being said, however, we also looked into other forms of ADR which may be suitable for your present issue, namely arbitration, conciliation, and negotiation. With regard to arbitration, this is a procedure whereby parties agree to let an arbitrator or a panel of arbitrators decide a dispute. The difference between arbitration and most other ADR processes is that parties may obtain a binding and private adjudication entirely outside the civil court process. This means that should you decide to go for arbitration, you and Steinway would be able to obtain a final and binding decision without going to court. However, the problem with arbitration is that over the years, it has grown to develop many of the same problems as litigation. For instance, the issues of costs and time, which plague litigation, are often present in arbitration, with experienced arbitrators typically being expensive to employ. In addition, these arbitrators may have packed schedules due to high demand, hence leading to long delays. So, in effect, you may have to fork out large amounts of money and be subject to long delays to have the case heard. Seeing as you don't appear to be willing to drag out the current matter at hand, these potential delays would certainly be undesirable. Furthermore, taking into account your hospitalization and further treatment, we would like to help you avoid any unnecessary costs incurred through this case. The finality of the arbitral award, say for some exceptional circumstances, is something to be borne in mind as well, as you would not be able to appeal the decision of the arbitrator, except for, of course, if there's any fraud or misconduct involved. Finally, arbitration can only resolve disputes that involve monetary awards. They are not able to compel one party to do something or issue injunctions. This affords less flexibility for you in terms of what remedy you want. While it is possible to obtain monetary compensation for dismissal, it won't be possible to order Simway to allow you to go back to work should you want that. It is for these reasons that we believe arbitration is unsuitable for your current circumstance. Aside from that, we also considered whether negotiation would be suitable for you. Perhaps the most common and straightforward form of ADR, this is a process whereby the parties and their legal advisors, which would be us in this case, seek to resolve the dispute by reaching an agreement either through written correspondence or a meeting between all concerned. This means that we would discuss with Simway's representatives and their counsels and try to reach an agreement. In many ways, negotiation embodies all the advantages often associated with ADR. Firstly, negotiation may take place on a without prejudice basis. This means that any statements made by either you or Simway seeking to settle the dispute cannot later be submitted to court as to be used against each other in settling the dispute. This, in turn, allows for free discussion and a higher likelihood of coming to a resolution. Aside from that, negotiation is also often more cost-effective than court proceedings and arbitration proceedings. Negotiation is also a flexible procedure, which allows for both you and Simway to have control over what the outcome is and ensures that both of you can come to a consensus in regard to the settlement. However, this also means that there is no guaranteed resolution. The success of negotiation will be heavily reliant on both you and Simway's willingness to compromise and agree on a settlement. This may adversely lead to having the issue being settled in court instead, leading to then the incurment of further costs and delays in your case. With mediation, the chances of coming to a resolution are higher as the mediator serves to facilitate the discussion. In contrast, the lack of such a neutral third party in negotiation proceedings may hamper the ability to reach a mutually satisfactory resolution. Hence, negotiation may not be the most suitable avenue for resolving a dispute. The final process we looked at is conciliation. This is a form of ADR process whereby the parties to a dispute agree to utilize the services of a conciliator, who then meets with each of the parties separately in an attempt to resolve their differences. Though this does sound similar to both arbitration and mediation, it differs from arbitration in that the conciliation process of itself has no legal standing. And it differs from mediation in that both you and Simway may actually seldom face each other across the table in the presence of a conciliator. Additionally, a conciliator usually has no authority to require the presentation of evidence, call witnesses, or make an award. This means that should you require any evidence from Simway for your case, a conciliator will lack any ground of authority to compel the submission of such evidence by Simway and their representatives. With regard to the award, if the conciliator is successful in negotiating an understanding, then that understanding is recorded in writing, often with the assistance of the respective parties' legal advisors, and signed by the parties. It then becomes a legally binding agreement. This, in effect, means that should you and Simway manage to reach an agreement, a written contract is signed, which is then enforceable in court should any party not fulfill their obligation. Conciliation can be carried out by a conciliator appointed by the parties, being someone that both parties respect and consider being able to bring about a resolution of the dispute. Or, alternatively, you may prefer to use a professional conciliator who is trained in the conciliation process, such as one from AIAC. This means that you and Simway may be able to appoint a conciliator which you both consider trustworthy, or you and Simway may choose one of the conciliators the AIAC have available, and if an agreement as to who the conciliator cannot be reached, the director of the AIAC may help you appoint one. Despite all these advantages, seeing as the relationship between you and Simway does not appear to have deteriorated to the extent of not being on speaking terms, conciliation may cause there to be less free-flowing discussion, as opposed to if the two of you opt for mediation. This free-flowing discussion will be imperative in achieving a mutually desirable outcome and ensuring that a good relationship is maintained between you, both you and Simway. Hence, although conciliation is a compelling option, we do believe that mediation is still the more suitable process. So, as you can see, my co-counsel and I have extensively considered other potential ADR processes, namely arbitration, conciliation, and negotiation. However, we have still come to the conclusion that mediation is still the more preferable process for your current circumstance. So Narcos, what do you think about our proposal?
I see. Well, taking into account what you said, I think it's clear that arbitration would not be the best option, as I am not prepared to bear the high level of costs and the long delay that may ensue. Likewise, I am not confident in the ability of Samway and I to reach a satisfactory solution without the presence of a neutral third party. Hence, negotiation would also not be appropriate. Conciliation, on the other hand, appears to be an attractive option, though you may be right about it not being the most necessary. Since you have recommended mediation and told me regarding all its benefits, I am inclined to opt for that. However, I would first like to know about the mediation procedure before making a decision. Would it be possible for you to tell me a little bit regarding that?
What good would we be otherwise? So typically, mediation procedures can be divided into a few stages. Firstly, the mediator and the parties agree to certain guidelines which they will follow throughout the course of the process. Following that, the parties are to explore their positions and interests by making initial statements regarding their disagreement and defining what they aim to accomplish through the mediation process. Then, the parties will each discuss their respective interests and provide possible solutions. Here, the mediator may hold some private sessions with each party to further determine their interests and discuss solutions. If at this point a solution seems feasible, the parties may then craft an agreeable resolution and subsequently sign a written agreement.
I see. So what role do my counsels play in all of this?
Well, our role as your lawyers would be to ensure that some record of the terms are prepared. This would mean finalizing and formalizing any settlement arrived at into a settlement agreement. This agreement will help ensure that there won't be any future misunderstandings between you and Simway as to the terms of the settlement.
Ah, that's great. But I'm a little concerned about its implementation. If Simway and I run into any disagreements or problems with this agreement, what can I do then?
Well, then we'll advise you of the options in dealing with problems, which may include returning to mediation or resorting to other means.
Ah, I understand. Seems like mediation is the way to go for me. Thank you both very much for the consultation.
Of course, do take some time to consider and let us know if you would like to proceed with mediation.
Bye.
Goodbye.